master's chair there, this big old emblazoned with falcons, and you feel like this little kid in it. We all sat in it, but when Zeke sat in it, this guy came bursting through the wall. It was a secret door panel. He'd been watching us, and he comes bursting through the wall. He's like, "That's it, that's it!" And he starts scolding the mason that was giving us the tour. I mean, we were digging behind everything. But anyway, you look up on the ceiling and you'll see the blazing star, which is the Masonic symbol for Sirius, in each corner. And then if you're standing to the worshipful master's seat is here, and you're standing here, look straight up, and in the wood grain you'll find the Dogon symbol for Sirius. Now, I find that very intriguing, and I'm hoping to go back deeper because there's more. You've seen Code 144, right? The magnetics of Ed Leeds Skalman compared to the art and architecture in the Philadelphia Lodge. Amazing. I'm hoping to get a lot of that. We went and filmed Coral Castle. Anyway, the symbol that the Dogon were given to represent Sirius was on each of the space shuttles that I had drawn in that picture at 10 years old. Now, Robert Temple wrote that book in 1976. I drew that picture in 1977.
Yeah, I don't suppose you had read that book in between those two.
Never heard of it. Yeah, no.
Or not in between 9 and 10, for
9
sure.
and 10 years old, exactly. And this was right before Star Wars, which was a good thing. It was like whatever message had to come through then, because otherwise those things probably would have been X-Wings. And that really speaks a lot to what Hollywood does to our minds. Disney movies say, making new memories. Right? They tell you, they're like capturing your imagination. And we don't think these things through. They're writing our own world into
But when was the design and launch of the first space shuttle?
Well, I did watch it launch from my backyard. I grew up in Orlando. I've watched almost all the launches, but I don't recall what year it was. Yeah.
Because I think your drawing might even predate the first of the space shuttles.
I wonder. Yeah, that's a good thing.
And they're clearly space shuttles. I mean,
oh yeah, I was
they've
definitely
even got
drawing
the
space shuttle, and,
yeah.
and the thing was, I sat there and I drew those space shuttles, and you see, I put the flames down the fuselage. I was trying to make them really cool, and well, I went to look at the shuttles, and I decided they all needed a symbol. And just in my childhood, why do I think of this? But I wanted a really cool symbol. I really did. And I sat there and I paused over this, and I remember this specifically. And then I just drew that little curved line and straight line through it and went, oh man, that's not that cool. I wasn't very appreciative of it. It wasn't what I was wanting. But I went ahead and I put it on each of the space shuttles. So now, 18 years later, I'm 28 years old and I'm reading the Sirius Mystery. And I see that symbol in the book for Sirius. And I'm in the midst of uncovering and unraveling all of this mystery right now. And I'm freaking out. And I run and I grab the picture because it's the only thing I have left. It's the last piece of my childhood puzzle. And I can lay the book and the picture side by side and you'll see it is the symbol for Sirius. So now I'm going, oh wow, okay, because I had just deciphered that the blazing star was Sirius for the Freemasons, and if you go look at NASA, what's on the side of the building but a blazing pentagram? And so I actually had the symbolism correct, because it would be a Masonic organization is NASA. You can't go into space if you haven't sworn at the altar, right? So now I've got this connection, and then in the other side of the drawing I've got the winged serpent. Now at 10 years old I knew nothing of Quetzalcoatl, Kakukan, or anything like that, or even dragon bloodlines or things of this nature. But there was that winged serpent. And so this ended up being the exopolitical explanation of the creation of civilization on planet Earth. That a race from Sirius and a race from Alpha Draconis, the giant serpent, came together to rule planet Earth in a marriage of convenience like we do now. They were the ones that brought the concept of this divine right to rule down, and also the concept of marrying kingdoms. And this came from extraterrestrial sources, if you start to believe what we're understanding about the truth of it now. So there I have the Syrians and the Alpha Draconans, but yet I had this thing in the center of the picture that I wasn't sure what it was. I personally thought it was a spiral galaxy when I drew it. And then we get a little deeper into the puzzle, and extraterrestrials are showing themselves all over the U.S. and all over the world. And these trans-dimensional craft are filmed by the Columbia Space Shuttle during the tether experiment. And as this tether breaks free from Columbia and starts floating down looking like a giant fluorescent bulb in space, all of these little flitting flying saucers are all over it, all flying around it, and they're ovalish, you know, almost round but not quite, with a divot in one side and a spiral going radiating out of the center. I start watching David Serrata's explanation of this, and he's talking about the hyperdimensional physics that he's deciphered from this, and then he shows the picture of it with it all spiraling to the center, and that's the picture in my picture. Right down to the point, I put them side by side just for you to see that that's the craft that the Columbia Space Shuttle filmed, or one of the many, and that's the art that you can see. I even have the dip, I have everything, it's identical. And so this blew my mind. I've even, in my film Columbia, I have superimposed the two over each other in the film, and you can see they're identical. So now I drew these pictures, and well, guess where they show up? Mali, Africa. They form a big circle around the Mali, Africa, and you can watch them go right over the horizon, but they're transparent. You can see right through them, hyperdimensional craft. So I started to believe and wonder, are these the Asgard, as in Stargate colloquialism, in that these might be the mediators, or the ones that are in between these two forces that I've drawn. And so this is the story that has been unfolding since then, and that's how I got into this. Well, I've had a giant V-shaped craft fly over my car while I was visiting a Mason or Mormon, not really visiting, but circling a Mormon temple in Ogden, Utah. A giant V-shaped craft flew over the car. Talk about a horrible moment as I try to film it and it's not coming out on film, and here I got this TV show and everything, and I can't show people the UFO that just flew over my head. Then I have to wonder about all of my extraterrestrial. I guess I skipped one more experience. I told you about the big V-shaped craft over Ogden. That was on our way to go meet the High Priest of the Church of Satan in Portland at an esoteric conference. But before that, with my friend that I was in with college, not the Alistair Morrison fellow, but our other fellow who went on to Hollywood to make movies. He's one of the guys that does all the CGI. He and I were at Daytona Beach after graduation for spring break, and we decided before going to the club to go and hang out at the beach for a minute. It's about 45 minutes drive from my house to the beach. And we're hanging out at the beach, and it's 10 p.m., and we're sitting on a lifeguard stand. All of a sudden, there's this giant rectangular craft hovering over the ocean. It's subdivided into 4 squares and looks like translucent light, but you can see the block of the thing. And it's just sitting there, and we're just pointing at it. Neither of us saying a word. And then I remember watching my finger as it took off. I don't remember seeing the craft leave or anything. I just have this vision of it. And we jumped down, freaked out. Oh my God, let's go tell everyone, you know, we gotta go. And so we could turn around, and it's spring break at Daytona Beach. There were thousands of people walking up and down the street, and, you know, all the cars driving up and down and everything. They were only a block away from where we were. And we jump off the lifeguard stand, walk over to the street, and the streets are empty, completely silent. And we're going, what happened here? So we start walking down the street in this kind of Twilight Zone feel, wondering what happened to all the people. Did they all get abducted by this giant craft, or what happened? We finally find out it's 5 hours later. We run into some kids, we find the time, and we learn that it's now 3:30 in the morning, everybody had gone home. So we lost that entire amount of time. I moved to Lawrence, Kansas later on, and lo and behold, there's my friend walking down the street. It turns out his girlfriend's going to KU. I'm like, what are you doing here? He comes home, tells everybody the whole story, confirms it for me, because you tell people these stories and they kind of fall like a lead brick, you know. Nobody really cares because they haven't experienced something as amazing as that. And he tells the whole story again without me even bringing it up, but he reminded me that on our way home, we couldn't figure out how to get home. We had been mind wiped, we couldn't remember we could tell that we were in my neighborhood, but didn't know what street to turn on, you know, and got home by, autopilot. But so there was that whole experience, and that was 1993. That was the moment, the Sirius contact as well, if I note the date, the 77, that was the same time that Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson both made contact with Sirius. So the cosmic trigger came out, right, and that his whole contact with Sirius. And he thought he was crazy, but it was the same time. And, Temple writing his book at the same time. Amazing. But in 93, after that moment, I started predicting world events. I don't know whether losing 5 hours of time, maybe witnessing an end of the world script, I don't know. I would love to know. I've led this whole story up till now, to the cloning of Barack Obama, which I laid out 5 years ago. Before I even heard of Barack Obama, I was talking about that they were going to clone mummies and bring them back. But the rest of the story lies in this hidden knowledge that's in my head, I believe. Because here I was, and I ended up moving to Lawrence, Kansas, and my first step of my hypothesis was to predict 9/11. Basically, exopolitics is a recent phenomenon, and mostly it's Dr. Michael Salla of the Exopolitical Research Institute. And what they've done is compiled evidence and data from whistleblowers, military, just contactees, whatever they could get, and they put it all together and said, what do we get? And they came up with 57 different alien species visiting and interacting with planet Earth. And they then discerned through tales, and what I find very interesting, they discerned the two races that supposedly are ruling and controlling civilization on planet Earth. And we'll get into some of what we see with Canberra, with Astana and Dubai, and how these relate to the extraterrestrial contact and how these things. But before that, when they outline these two races, especially the Alpha Draconans and the Sirians, now Alpha Draconans, as we said, is the dragon, and Sirius is a binary star system that is of very much importance to the Egyptians, to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the Masons, to the OTO, to the SRI, to, I could go on, as many, the Mayans, of the people that have worshipped and been discussing the star Sirius. Now, the thing about the Dogon tribe was that they actually had astronomical data about Sirius, that the binary star would orbit every 50 years and was the heaviest thing in the universe, they said. And then we find out that it's actually this massive dwarf star and it orbits 50 years. We didn't even have pictures of Sirius B while the Dogon were talking about it. And yet they don't have telescopes, they live in sandcastles, and so we have all of this data and evidence to suggest that there has been extraterrestrial contact. And I personally, my theory is that civilization is derived from that extraterrestrial contact and is actually the purpose of civilization. Because this has been the big question to me, why are we building Large Hadron Colliders? Why are we launching into space? What's the program here? Because once you start to get deep into it, you realize they're all also worshiping at the Freemasonic altar and channeling extra-dimensional beings and developing buildings to channel paramagnetic energies. It gets bizarre. So you're like, okay, there's way more to this story. Aleister Crowley is channeling a Syrian being, or what he called an Atlantean from Sirius.
Would that be Lam?
Lam was first, then Awas. So Lam, when he depicted Lam, he drew him, and he is a gray. And it's early, and this is, Crowley died when the Roswell crash happened, okay? So 1947 is when Crowley passed, and there's a very interesting tale as when Jack Parsons, the head of Jet Propulsion's laboratories, who was working with the Nazis and Werner von Braun to start NASA and Jet Propulsions, and L. Ron Hubbard, and they're trying to raise a moonchild through their nuclear testing, and using the nuclear explosions for a catalyst to insert a god form into a child, which is a moon child. And as they are performing this, Aleister Crowley dies. And they believe that they actually had, channeled an energy that was, they were at war with Aleister Crowley at some points. McGregor Mathers, and maybe I'm confusing that story a little bit, but it does turn